Hello there, and welcome to a special holiday edition episode of the Horn Call podcast. This is getting to be a bit of an annual tradition. I think this is the third one we've done. My name is James Bolden. I am the host of the IHS podcast and the publications editor as well. My very special guests today for this special edition podcast episode are Allison DeMeulle, the Interim Executive Director of the IHS, and Johanna Lundy, the Treasurer of the IHS. We cover lots of fun things today in our discussion. We talk about the great year that the IHS has had and all of the exciting things that have happened the past year and that are upcoming in future years. One thing that I want to make sure and mention at the top of the podcast is unfortunately, we did not mention how grateful we are to the previous symposium host of IHS 55, Louis-Philippe Marsollet. Thank you so much, Louis-Philippe, for putting together just the biggest horn party of last year. And thank you so much for everything you did to make that an amazing symposium. So that was one thing we just, in all of our enthusiasm to talk about stuff, we just left that out for some reason. But thank you again, Louis-Philippe, and to your entire team in Montreal for putting on IHS 55. And now we made sure to mention that. On with my discussion with Allison DeMeulle and Johanna Lundy. And thank you both so much for joining me. I am here with two of the very amazing people that really run the International Horn Society, Johanna Lundy, the Treasurer, and Allison DeMeulle, the Interim Executive Director. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so we were just talking off mic about what this episode is going to be about. So first of all, it's our kind of become an annual tradition, a holiday special episode that's in between the normal monthly episodes. So this is a special edition podcast. And maybe Allison, tell us a little bit about what it means to be the interim executive director, of an organization, and how that sort of came to be in your lap. And you're doing a very, very fine job doing it. But there's a bit of a story there, right? Because you have been involved with the IHS for a while now, but you are fairly new to this position of interim executive director.
Yeah. So before I assumed this role, I was in the role of secretary. So I was taking minutes. You might have listened to the podcast I did before. That kind of explains what that role was like. And then sadly, our executive director, Julia Bircher, she stepped down as executive director. But through her and all of the things that she's been working on, she passed on the position to me. And it was not too crazy of a shift, at least in terms of I didn't have to kind of pick up on the knowledge because I was already secretary before. So as secretary, I was kind of already aware of all the things that we were working on. And so, yeah, that's kind of how things transitioned there.
Mm-hmm. Just a note about being a secretary. When I'm on committees at my university, I always volunteer to be the secretary because it keeps me engaged in what's going on in the meetings because I'm forced to pay attention rather than zoning out. So, yeah, for
Definitely.
sure. Yeah, the position of secretary is super important to any organization. And Johanna, tell us a little bit about what the treasurer does for the IHS.
Sure. I've worked in a couple different roles here. So I have a background in development in addition to, understanding finance. So that's helped me with looking at the numbers. It's also helped me in guiding our asset management. So we do have, a substantial amount of endowed scholarship, primarily scholarship monies. So those are managed at the Toledo Community Foundation. So that's one of the things that's been a part of my role. Also in consultation with the president and the executive director, we work every year to create the draft budget, which is then approved by the advisory council in full at our big meeting, which happens at the symposium every summer. And then I guess I'd say from day to day, another important thing that Treasurer does is just reviewing and proposing, or sorry, not proposing, but approving expenses. So, we're primarily seeing the same expenses we'd expect from the budget. It's pretty boring. It's pretty mundane. We're not having any wild and crazy expenses come up. So it's just carrying out what we've agreed to in general. And so yeah, that's pretty much how I'm involved.
Well, great. And in case anybody wasn't aware that's listening out there, the International Horn Society is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And that means that most of the people doing the majority of the work are not paid employees. That's right?
Yeah. So a lot of our volunteers do things like they manage the different events going on in each region and making sure that the people in those regions are aware of what's going on, if they have any special events coming up. And then they kind of all work together to kind of facilitate between the different regions, make sure there are no big scheduling conflicts between nearby areas and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, most of the people involved in the organization are volunteers. They are mostly not compensated. So, for example, the executive committee; those are the 4 elected officers. So we do not receive a salary. The advisory council does not receive a salary. We receive a little bit of support, some support to come to the annual symposium. But as far as the paid positions, we have, a pretty lean team. So James is one of our people because it takes so much time to create the horn call. We've got a membership coordinator, and then the executive director is kind of making sure everything happens and running the biz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a new addition to the staff, Jefferson Montiel, the social media coordinator. That was a big deal, right? This bringing on a social media person specifically to handle that aspect of the organization.
Yeah, especially in this stage of kind of where social media has taken off. It's so important because it's really probably the most important tool in order to connect with our community and our audiences, in order to make sure that they know the different opportunities that are available through the International Horn Society and any of the upcoming events, and especially, everything happening with the symposium, kind of getting excited and ramping up for that each year. Yeah.
Yeah, and Allison and I were both, this was very important to us. We were both involved in the hiring committee for that position. It was a big one for us. We had amazing applicants. We had a lot of applicants, and we both have been coming to this with that eye, especially Allison, being younger than myself, but knowing, I think we have a lot of people serving in volunteer capacities for whom social media is not necessarily of their generation. And so it's been uncomfortable for some people, but we knew we needed to do this. And I think it's been working out really beautifully, and trying to just transfer some of the great things that we're doing into that format.
Yeah, his stuff is really good. I've seen some of the video content, and then, the posts that show up on Instagram and Facebook. So if you are not following the IHS on Instagram and Facebook, please go do that as soon as you're done with this episode. So another thing we had talked about briefly before we started the recording today was it's been a good year for the IHS. There's been a lot of things happening, things taking shape. It might be nice for listeners, again, this being kind of a year-end summing up special episode of the podcast, talk a little bit about what this year has been like for the IHS. And again, we don't have to get into specifics or anything like that, but just big picture stuff that the general IHS member might not be aware of, but that, this is our organization. Everybody should feel like they belong because they love the horn, and, whatever level that is and what that means to you, you are part of the IHS. So I'm going to let you all go for it.
Yeah, one of the big things that we've been working on is revamping our awards and scholarships programs and kind of changing up the repertoire to make it more, more diverse, more equal, better representation. Also incorporating a lot more newer things, a lot more modern stuff, rather than just kind of the standard works. While those are really helpful to be working on, obviously for auditions and things like that, it's also nice to kind of expand the horizons and see what else is out there too.
Yeah, and I'll add that over the last couple of years, we did a lot of work with clarifying and creating our mission, vision, and values. So some of
Mhm.
those pieces, we always had a mission before, but we brought some more clarity into it with those other pieces, and I think we're doing really well with having those in place to guide the organization with our decision making. So that's another thing, and I can give a little snapshot kind of our budget. So for those who don't know, our annual budget is has been around 200,000 US annually. So again, it always depends from year to year, kind of what we have coming and going, but. The horn call is obviously going to be a large chunk of that,
Mhm.
because we have the editing needs, we have printing, mailing costs, but there are a lot of other things that we do. Most of our money goes to program things, so including Horn Call, but also scholarships, awards. So we really try to support students. We have a new initiative that's a really beautiful thing. I hope people have heard about it. It's specifically a gift that came in to honor um, amateur and enthusiast players. So that is an endowed gift that is going to, we're still seeking information. So if you are listening to this and you say, that's me, I have ideas of how that funding could be used to support the enthusiast community near where I live, we want to hear from you. So, so that's exciting, a new initiative for us, and of course supporting compositions for the horn. So we have a variety of ways that we are able to do that with awards, and also the Mir Ramon composer commission support.
That's impacted a lot of people. There's,
Mhm.
dozens and dozens of things that have been commissioned through that. And then, of course, the composition contest that is, it's not every year. I think it's every other year, if I'm remembering correctly. And then now the decision
Yeah.
is Ramon will be on the years that the composition contest isn't. And then, so there will be something happening
Yeah.
every year with regard to new music for the horn. So that's exciting. And I think probably most people out there, even if they're not IHS members, they've come across the website, right? Either through
Mhm.
Darren Robbins, hornexcerpts.org, or they've looked for music online through the online music sales, or they've looked at the classified ads, which used to be hornplayer.net, but now it's completely, part of the IHS. So, one big thing this year is the revamping of the website. So if you've not been to hornsociety.org in a little bit, you have to check it out. Shout out to Dan Phillips, who's the webmaster extraordinaire. He's he's done a lot, and he's technically retired now, but you wouldn't know it from all the work he does on the IHS website.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's beautiful looking, it's clean. I think he's done a lot with getting that new format to be as usable as possible. And I mean, you know, if you go to that website, you really should probably join the IHS, or at least support the organization in some fashion, because you're using, a very, very valuable resource, and every little bit's going to help support that. And so the more support the organization gets, the more things like that they can do, the better they can serve the membership.
Yeah, and about the website, I mean, it is a tremendous resource. So for people who haven't checked it out recently, I mean, there are recordings, there are articles that are available to the whole world for
Hmm.
free. So, I mean, especially as a college professor, I like to use it if I'm giving assignments. Hey, I want you to go research this so and so, famous horn player. There just are a lot of resources there for learning. That, I mean, I know that something we've really taken seriously is, as the world has become more and more connected online, especially during the pandemic. Why does the Horn Society exist? And it's a fair question, right? I think, but we, in addition to some important reasons offline, I think we are really contributing a lot of important content, and it's not, it's been curated,
Hmm.
it's vetted, and we have a lot of very accomplished people who've contributed to this organization. It's not just a random thread, a random YouTube where, and that's not to say that everyone's perspective isn't valid, but it is to say that it's a slightly more rigorous and academic place you can go for information. And I think, again, beyond that, one of the things that I know is so important to Haragundus is current president, is just the idea of fellowship and community. And I think that that is something that, we try to use the online tools as best we can because of being worldwide. It's very hard to, we can't all be all over the world, but we are really trying to make a space where everyone can feel included. For people who don't know, we have a special membership fee guideline. So they're actually, this is based on country gross domestic product, I believe, but the figures, it comes from a UN world index. And so there actually are some countries where you can become a digital member of the IHS for free. So it really is an effort to make the organization something that can be for everyone. We obviously have a lot of US members, but really trying to support as best we can a worldwide community of horn players.
Yeah, one of the biggest concepts we've talked about in the executive committee, both in my time as secretary and as interim executive director, is the idea that the International Horn Society isn't just the people who are either who are paid or who are on the advisory council or anything like that. It's the International Horn Society is our entire horn community, and all of our community members make up the International Horn Society. We are all the International Horn Society.
Yeah, and that brings to mind another project that the IHS supports is regional workshops. It's depending on where and when the international symposium is, not everybody may be able to get to it every year, although I highly encourage anyone who's not been to one, you've got to go check one of these out, because it's sort of the culmination of that year of the IHS, and that's where the annual meeting is, and that's where as many of us that we can get together when feasible, we get together. But if you can't, there are regional workshops all over the place happening at different times. You can find that out on the IHS website. There's a calendar function that tells you about events happening that might be closer to you and more feasible to get to. And so those regional workshops and conferences get support from the IHS. People can apply for funding. So that's yet another thing that people's contributions are going to support.
I'll quickly add to that we take it really seriously, and we appreciate your feedback. We want more feedback. And we know one thing we have heard is it is expensive and it's hard to get to the international, right? So we know that, and that's not going to work for everybody. So we have talked a lot about what we might do in the future to either have smaller events that could be on different continents, more regularly, or what are some ways that we could facilitate participation at the symposium without physically being there. So, all ideas are on the table. We really do want to make it's not meant to be something exclusive, but there is a value to bringing people together from international, places. It makes it for a special event.
Yeah, 100%. Well, okay. So let's say I am someone out there listening to this, and okay, you sold me. I want to give X number of something to the IHS. What would be the best way for me to go do that?
Yes. Well, thanks for asking. So there are a couple different ways that you can support what we're doing. So, membership is one. If you're not a member of the IHS, there are a lot of benefits to joining. So I hope people might consider that. If you're not a member, but maybe the price of membership is just not something that you can afford, maybe you want to just even throw a couple dollars this way, that's fine too. Maybe you are a member and you have some additional funds that you could give. We'd love to have your support as well. For people who want to do something digital, it's as simple as going to hornsociety.org/donate. Or you can also just, even if you get yourself to hornsociety.org, you can find it pretty easily from the homepage. And I also want to make another point, which is that this is not just about money, but there are a lot of volunteer opportunities as well. So if you are someone who says, you know what, I want to get more involved, I don't have the funds, we have a lot of opportunities. And I know, Allison, you were going to talk a little about the student advisory board.
Yeah, so we're actually currently revamping the Student Advisory Council, which is it was created as a small committee of students to actually attend our advisory council meetings and really give their perspective, because it's so important to hear that student perspective, because the older people who are in the advisory council may not have as relevant to the experience that students are currently having. And so in that way, it's a good way to kind of tie all parts of our community together in order to make sure that we're making the most relevant decisions for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know, the advisory council is the governing body of the International Horn Society. They're elected by the membership, and then they serve a certain number of years as a term, and there's all kinds of specifications to that. But they are people that care deeply about the horn and about promoting the goals and the vision of the IHS. So they are the ones that are working behind the scenes, like the two of you, to just keep the organization afloat, for one, and two, to keep it relevant and useful and as robust as it can be for anybody that is interested in this instrument. So shout out to everybody on the AC.
Yeah, it's a great group of people, and even beyond the AC, we do have other committees and other roles. So if you think, oh, I don't think I'll get elected to the AC, or I don't know if I want to commit that much time, I don't know, whatever it is. I think just reaching out to anybody who's involved would be a great starting place. We do want voices on these other committees, such as the scholarship committee. We've had development committee, budget committee at different times in the past. So there are important roles, even in social media. We have a really great volunteer who's working with us and Jeff. Yeah, so there are a lot of ways to get involved. Hopefully, for U.S. members, hopefully you saw a letter that came from us in the mail. So we wanted to be, in touch with people a little bit more. So just sharing some of the exciting things that we're proud of. So in that letter, talking a little bit about the impact of our awards and competitions on people. And a special quote from Jen Montone in that message. So hopefully everybody has that. And for those who are beyond the U.S., you could make a donation as well. It just won't be tax deductible. But if that's something you're able to do, we'd be very grateful.
Yeah, and so getting it in by year's end, allows you to put that on your
that is important.
Your tax return. Yep.
Important detail. Thank you for mentioning that. It must be postmarked by December 31st if you are mailing a check. And if you want to make a donation through the website, it's an online thing and it's pretty easy. But yes, again, that is the deadline for this tax year if you're paying U.S. taxes.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how you guys are doing everything you're doing, because you're both busy professionals outside of this stuff for the IHS, so thank you both so much for doing everything you're doing. There was what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, so with nonprofits, there's never enough hands to go around for all the jobs that need to be done. So don't ever think, oh, they've got it covered, they don't need my help. If you are willing and interested in helping the IHS, there will be something that could benefit from your help for sure.
Yeah, well, another, quick shout out to the newsletter, because this has become something that I think a lot of people are really enjoying and following, and it's done 100% with volunteer time. So both people writing submissions and sending those in, and then Mike Harcrow, and he has a team as well. It's not even just him. It is a lot of people that it takes, like Allison said, we are all part of this. And we want to make sure, Mike, it's very important to him to have international representation in those newsletters. So if you're listening to this and you know someone elsewhere from another, a country that we haven't heard from recently, or if you live in a country that is not getting enough visibility, please reach out. We really want to hear from you. Or if you're in a country we've heard more from, hey, we're not excluding anybody. There's enough room for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mike is a go-getter. He's like the most intense but laid back person. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he's intense.
He's got intensity in his enthusiasm, and I think that's very key to how he operates. And it's infectious.
Yeah, but then he's laid back. I never feel like pressured by anything I'm talking about, which is good. So, well, Allison and Johanna, is there anything else we want to cover today in this special edition podcast?
Yeah, I just would say thanks. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a part of what we're doing here. And reach out if you have ideas about how we can do a better job.
Yeah, and again, this being in December, a happy upcoming new year and best wishes for a prosperous 2024 to everybody.